Why should they have to subsidize taxpayers in New Jersey and Connecticut and California when they're representing lower income people who don't even take deductions at all in Alabama or Tennessee or wherever it is?
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Bedford, and I'm here with policy editor Joe Lawler. Joe, Republicans in the House and the Senate are working on this one big, beautiful bill, finally to get over the finish line sometime this summer. One of the things that is holding them up is what to do about Medicaid, to find money to pay for extending the tax cuts, and Republicans don't seem to agree on how to cut that massive program, right?
That's right. So we're now in the period of time where it's down to the last minute negotiations on what's going to fit into the bill. Some horse trading, some counting costs, and figuring out what they can do and what they can't do. And Medicaid is really one of the biggest ones left because it's such a huge budget item, and it's one of the few areas of the federal government that Republicans, generally speaking, President Trump specifically, have indicated that they're open to cutting. So right now there's a lot of talks about Medicaid.
Do you think that Trump has sort of put them in a tough spot because he has said, let's cut the waste, fraud, and abuse, but to make the numbers work, cuts may need to go a little bit deeper than that. And Donald Trump has made a lot of promises that we won't, cut Medicaid. And so what constitutes a cut, right? If you scale back what the share that the federal government gives the states or those sorts of things, is that a cut? What is the meaning of a cut?
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? So one man's waste, fraud, and abuse is another man's benefit cut. So what can they do that could be construed as cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, or reducing spending through the program in a way that is not a benefit cut, or at least they can go out to their constituents and say, we did this, we reformed the program, and we didn't actually cut benefits for anyone. One possibility that looks quite likely is some kind of stepped up work requirements for beneficiaries. So you can say, this isn't taking away anyone's benefit, we're just saying that if you are in the program, you have to work a certain amount of hours a week to continue receiving these benefits. So that one seems reasonably easy to defend. And then there's other alternatives that might be more difficult. And we've seen that this past week, a lot of jockeying, a lot of negotiating, a lot of argument over what would constitute a cut. And as you said, reducing rates that are reimbursed to states, which would save the federal government a lot of money over the next decade. That seems to have been ruled out because for some centrists that looks too much like a benefit cut.
Another pay for that's on the table but that some vulnerable House Republicans are against is the SALT deduction and, adjusting the caps on that. Is that something that you think is going to make the final bill?
Yeah, so you're talking about the cap on state and local the cap on deductions, tax deductions for taxes paid to state and local governments.
Right.
And this is a huge issue for Republicans from high tax states like New York and California who want to see the cap, which was implemented by the 2017 tax cuts, increase from $10,000. The problem is that if you increase that cap, you're losing the federal government even more money at a time when they need every penny they can find to offset the tax cuts that they already want to include. So that's a major point of negotiation right now. TBD, it looks like there will be some relief in terms of a higher cap that will benefit those taxpayers in New Jersey, California, New York. But that, again, is the kind of thing that's going to have to be hashed out in the coming days as they are actually writing the bill. And that's a tough one for fiscal conservatives. Why should they, this is what they're thinking in their own minds, why should they have to subsidize taxpayers in New Jersey and Connecticut and California when they're representing lower income people who don't even take deductions at all in Alabama or Tennessee or wherever it is? So that's been a big debate this past week as well.
Finally, if you had to sort of rate or give a vibe check on how close they are to getting to a deal and how likely it is that they'll come up with something that can pass both the House and the Senate, where would you say we are right now?
Yeah, that's a great question because the closer you get to a deal in negotiations, the more it looks like no, 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 right? Because you're butting up against people's actual red lines, and that's where the deal gets made. So it seems like with this negotiation, as with others, it'll look like more increasingly tense no's from either side until the last moment when you actually get the deal. And no one's going to come out with everything they wanted. No one's going to get their full SALT tax break. No one's going to get exactly the Medicaid policy they want. But that's the way the process works. So it does seem like they've imposed quite a strict deadline on themselves. It's going to be tough for them to meet that deadline, but for sure the pressure is on them to deliver, and I think that we'll see some sort of compromise in, I don't know exactly when, but yeah, it'll come maybe next week, maybe later.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more from Joe and the rest of the policy team at washingtonexaminer.com.